most welcome to Historiespanarna History Reconnaissance and the Lost Flying Boat Against All Odds in the Pacific. This is the amazing story of 5 US Navy aviators in the mid-1920s fighting for their survival in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It all began on August 31, 1925, when 2 US Navy P-9 flying boats set off for the first non-stop flight from the US West Coast to Hawaii. A 24-hour voyage over 2,400 miles of open ocean. So join us for the story of this ocean crossing that took place 2 years before Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic. And please, subscribe to our channel and take part in our continuing journey in history. The US Navy's West Coast Hawaii flight of 1925 had been planned for at least 3 years, and it involved 3 flying boats, 2 PN-9s, built in the Navy's Naval Aircraft Factory in Philadelphia, P standing for Patrol, N for Navy, as well as the PB-1, a Boeing-built flying boat, but mechanical problems on board PB-1 caused it to be dropped from the Navy's flight plan. In July, Commander Rogers determined the composition of the crews for the PN-9s. In the plane with Rogers, number 1, were to be Lieutenant Colonel, Chief Radioman Stantz, and Naval Aviation pilots Pope and Bowen. The other, number 3, was placed under the command of Lieutenant Snowdy, with Lieutenant Gavin as the co-pilot, and 3 enlisted men as pilot, radioman, and aviation machinist mate. The US Navy had crossed an ocean by air before, but not non-stop. In 1919, Lieutenant Commander Albert Reed and a crew of 5 piloted an NC-4 float plane across the Atlantic in 19 days. Departing from New York City on May 8, the NC-4 made stops for refueling or repair in Massachusetts, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and the Azores, before reaching Lisbon, Portugal. Then, in 1924, 2 US Army planes fitted with pontoons completed a round-the-world trip, taking half a year to travel about 27,000 miles across 21 countries. Thousands of people had gathered around San Francisco Bay to witness the takeoff of PN-9 number 1 and its sister flying boat PN-9 number 3, each carrying over 1,000 gallons of gasoline. The flying boats were so heavily laden with fuel that number 1 failed to lift off during its first attempt across the bay. It wasn't until the second attempt, after shifting loose fuel cans and all crew members except the pilot to the back, that it finally took to the air. The 2 large flying boats flew slowly past Alcatraz Island and through the yet-to-be-bridged Golden Gate. Then the aircraft were off across the vast Pacific. Four hours later, PN number 3 lost oil pressure on one engine and had to make an emergency landing. With one engine still running, they could continue their course riding the waves. And the following morning, a ship, the USS William Jones, attracted by the very shells they fired, came to their rescue and took them in tow. Before the halfway, 1,200-mile mark was reached, Rogers in PN number 1, after encountering hour after hour of headwind, concluded that he would have to land beside one of the guard ships and refuel. Rogers figured that he had sufficient gasoline to reach the Aroostook 400 miles further on and still have sufficient fuel for 40 minutes additional flying. While looking for the ship, his gasoline gave out and he made a forced landing, 25 hours and 23 minutes after leaving San Francisco. Once on the water, Rogers and his companions examined the plane and found it in good condition. Of their rations, 12 ham sandwiches, 10 quarts of water and 2 of coffee remained, in addition to 3 pounds of hardtack and 6 pounds of canned corned beef, brought along for just such an emergency. Unfortunately, the radio sending apparatus worked on a window driver generator that ceased functioning when the PN9's number 1 landed. While the P9 sailed on at 2 knots, an intensive search began under the direction of Commander Van Auken of the Aroostook. The carrier Langley hurried up from the eastward, and her planes conducted daily search missions over the adjoining waters. Submarines and patrol planes from the Hawaiian Islands joined in, and even a squadron of destroyers accompanying the fleet on its return from Australia covered the areas south of the islands. In a heartbreaking radio communication from the carrier USS Langley that was overheard by Rogers and his crew, said, "Concur the plane has sunk and the search should be discontinued." Rogers then said to his crew, "Hell, boys, we might be worse off than this. Why, I once knew a man who was adrift for 15 days with nothing but a log under him." All these efforts proved in vain until 1600 hours on September 10th, when PN9 number 1, having sailed the waves for 11 days, was discovered by the US submarine R4 about 10 miles from the island of Kauai, some 450 miles from where it had come down. They had for several days suffered from lack of water until a lucky rain squall on the 8th day replenished the supply. R4 signaled to the flying boat. What plane is that? The flying boat signaled back immediately. PN9 number 1 from San Francisco. That night, R4 helped tow the flying boat into Kauai's Nawiliwili harbor. When the news of the safe arrival reached the Navy Department, a flood of messages began arriving from agencies of the government, local officials of all sorts, foreign governments and individuals. The first wave of congratulatory telegrams was followed by invitations for Commander Rogers and his crew to appear at civic functions all over the nation.
That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.